Good evening. It's a privilege to have the honor to introduce Winona LaDuke this evening. I would like to start with a description used on a website to describe our speaker. Winona LaDuke is one of the world's most tireless and charismatic leaders on issues related to climate change, indigenous rights, human rights, green and rural economies, grassroots organizing, local foods, alternative energy sources, and the priceless value of clean water in a career spanning over 40 years. She is the Executive Director of Honor the Earth and is an Anishinaabe enrolled member of the Mississippi Band of Anishinaabe. She lives and works on the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota. Winona founded the White Earth Land Recovery Project in 1989 with the goal of buying back land within the reservation held by non-natives. She served as the Executive Director for over 25 years, and this White Earth Land Recovery Project won many awards, including the 2003 prestigious International Slow Food Award for Biodiversity, recognizing the organization's work to protect wild rice from patenting and genetic engineering. In 1993, she was co-founder of Honor the Earth, where she still serves as Executive Director. Honor the Earth works to raise public awareness and raise and direct funds to grassroots Native environmental groups. This is the only Native organization that provides both financial support and organizing support to Native environmental initiatives. In over 20 years of operations, the organization has re-granted over $2 million to over 200 Native American communities. Winona LaDuke's leadership and vision has led to numerous awards. In 2007, she was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame, recognizing her leadership and her community commitment. In 1994, she was nominated by Time magazine as one of America's 50 most promising leaders under 40. In 1996, she was awarded the Thomas Merton Award and the 1997 Ms. Woman of the Year Award with the Indigo Girls. A graduate of Harvard and Antioch University, she's written extensively on Native American and environmental issues. She's a former board member of Greenpeace USA and is presently an advisory board member for Trust of Public Lands Native Lands Program. She is the author of many books, and there are some for sale out in the lobby this evening after the talk, if you're interested. And these books include Recovering the Sacred, The Power of Naming and Claiming, All of Our Relations, Native Struggles for Land and Life, and a novel, Last Standing Woman. She is widely recognized for her writings and speaking on environmental and human rights issues. Her most recent work is the Winona LaDuke Chronicles, Stories from the Front Lines in the Battle for Environmental Justice. In this book, Winona writes, "In the North American First World, tribal communities and First Nations struggle just to survive. In our resilience and beauty, these stories are inspired." Please join me in welcoming Winona LaDuke.
Hello, can you all hear me okay? Ani Nindoy Magadatuk, Nigagagit Magas, Ine Sequator, Makon, Rodam, Kabavani Khan, Kishkani, and Dunjimanakush. Thank you very much for the honor of being here today. My relatives, I just want to acknowledge and thank the Ho-Chunk Nation for the territory here that we're on. I'm really pleased to be here, and I got a lot of friends out there. I just was really happy to see Edie and Paul. And Mike Wiggins is here too, and Al Geddix. I know him ever since I was like 4 or something like that. And Julie, thank you for your hard work here, and Bill Greendeer, for your hard work also on rights of nature. So just super honored to be here. And today I got to listen to Mari speak. How many of you were there today? That was awesome, wasn't it? That was something really kind of I think she's heading out pretty quick here, but just really brilliant. And the work of the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund that I do have a relationship to, so it's really an honor to be here. I'm going to do my best. I'm a little worse for where I just came in from Standing Rock. I've been up there quite a bit off and on, and it's a little rough. We'll go with a little rough will be a description, and it's rough. But it's good, it's a good moment in time. It's an epic moment in our history. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I just want to talk a little bit foundationally on the idea of the rights of nature and Indigenous thinking about what is the law And I want to say I'm super privileged in that I, had an opportunity to visit a lot of indigenous communities, and Gitche Debwewen would be, maybe the word we would use in Anishinaabe Moan to describe what is the great law in our teachings. The essential thought is really Minimamana Siwan. Minimamana Siwan is Anishinaabe people. The idea is that is what we seek to attain in our lives, the good life. It's called the good life. Minimamana Siwan, the good life. Which I think in kind of modern day vernacular is something like you're hearing coming out of gross national happiness indexing. If you're what I'm saying in Bhutan, or the question of what is the quality of life in relationship to GNP. And more countries on a worldwide scale are saying that quality of life is not related to level of militarization or level of consumption. And perhaps quality of life is related to, and when you look at the indicators, the quality of life is indicated by things like the quality of your relationships, if you have access to water, if you have access to an ecosystem that is yours, if you have security in your home, if the quality of life for women and children is of high value to your community. That is what generally it is found that quality of life indicators are. One of the, the elements that, I think that we need to work on is re-indexing in the United States, and in fact re-indexing in our own native communities, because often we're looking at indicators that have nothing to do with our values. And so, I think that is really what this Minimamana Siwan is in terms of this social practice and public policy. But in terms of more of the legal framework that would beckon, I would say that, there are some elements that we have as an understanding as Anishinaabe people or as other indigenous people which reflect those set of teachings. And the first is, I would say, is Gitche Debwewen, or the idea that the Creator's law is the highest law, higher than the laws made by nation states or municipalities. And one would do well to live in accordance with the Creator's law. Another teaching that I believe we have is the idea of an animate world. And I believe this was discussed some today, but even in our language, Anishinaabe Moan and a lot of other indigenous languages, many of our nouns are animate. And so I've always, wondered and understood, the profound thinking that has in our language a sin, the word for stone is an animate noun in our language, indicating that is a being that has standing, that has power, that has spirit unto itself. And that valuation, I believe, is essential to how you make a society, and a civil society that reflects and reaffirms the values. Because indeed, the laws that we create as nations should reflect the values of sustainability of our nations. A third basic construct, I would say, is in most indigenous societies, and I always have to kind of give a little bit of a aside on this, because this is not just about Native people in North America. Everybody's indigenous to some place. It is just that people got further lost and removed from those teachings over time. And indigenous societies on a worldwide scale retain many of those values in spite of 500 years of colonialism. We still understand these things, although we struggle, in this time, in this day and age. But in that there's this teaching of cyclical thinking. And in our Anishinaabe Moan, our time now, Benakweo Gizis, which is when the leaves are falling moon, is what we would call this time now. I have no ability to speak Ho-Chunk, so I have no idea what y'all call it, but probably some similar set of teachings, but Benakweo Gizis, Gashkadno Gizis is what's coming up. That's a freezing over moon, is what that's called. And then there's a Manaju Gizis Suns, Gitche Manaju Gizis, the little spirit moon and the great spirit moon, the Mayabina Gizis, that's a moon that follows that, that's Sucker moon. And then you got Winona Gizis, which is the hard-crusted snow moon, kind of around March when it freezes and thaws, and we all know that, yeah? Also known as the moon you don't want to do a face plant in the snow. So, our maple syrupy moon follows that, and then our Wabakana Gizis, our moon for the flowers, and then you have Odamina Gizis, a strawberry moon, Mean Gizis, a blueberry moon, Winona Gizis, our wild rice making moon. Those are the Wachibaga Gizis is when your leaves change color. So that is, I say that because I think that I would hope that some of you are familiar at least with the indigenous languages and the land upon which you live. Because there is an essential nature of understanding the relationship between place and language. But also, you know, I always like to use our language when we can, but I think more than that, you know, those moons reflect place. They reflect place in a cyclical way of living and an understanding of the world as a cyclical world that is reaffirmed in our cultural practice. But it is also, I always like to say those moons because I don't know if any of you noticed, but none of those moons is named after a Roman emperor. Did y'all get that? It's possible to have an entire worldview that has nothing to do with empire. You'll be okay. I just want to let y'all know it's okay. Just let that stuff go. It's like way too much to drag around. Just want to say, it's like this question of a paradigm shift. That's what it really is. It's like if you're carrying around all those bags, it's really hard to shift your paradigm because it's really heavy to carry. And you're trying to justify everything in that paradigm you're carrying around, which is really some excessive baggage. You know? So this idea of cyclical thinking, the moons, the tides, our bodies, those are all cycles. Natural world is cyclical. Then the idea of, anthropologists call it reciprocity. I always like anthropologists, they always like have some big name for everything, you know. But you know what that means, I think, in our teachings is as you see indigenous people, there's always this ethic of you always offer a prayer of gratitude when you harvest, or when you take something, or when you have, you know, a feast, or, you know, just to be prayerful because everything is a gift from the Creator and from the natural world. And then within that there is a certain ethic which is really this ethic of you take only what you need and you leave the rest. You take only what you need and you leave the rest. And you know, that's an essential ethic of a legal paradigm too, which is a human management practice, which is, you know, it is totally, you know, not accurate to say just a sustainable harvest in fisheries. It is actually how do you sustain an ecosystem, you know, as the ethics of that. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on, but I'm saying these are tenets that you need in a legal system that is based on natural law, or is based on the rights of nature. Perhaps the fifth is the idea of Winona LaDuke, which is a Anishinaabe word, but it is a common word and a phrase which is we are all related. We are related. Whether we have wings or fins or roots or paws, we are related. We are all relatives. In fact, in a world like 99.9% the same, which I always think, you know, must really have, you know, been a bummer for those white supremacists when they figured that out. And it's like, oh man, it's all pretty much the same, you know, yeah, we're all pretty much the same. But, you know, we're all related, we're all related. And then perhaps the final teaching, you know, that is within this Minopamanaziva, or this code, that is an essential code, I believe, of the natural law, is the idea of in each deliberation, consider the impact upon the seventh generation from now. Because the decisions we make today are really, you know, going to affect it way ahead. You know, and so I think those are really basic tenets of the Creator's law and how they are applied in public policy. And what I want to say is that I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, and I'm not going to go into the whole how industrial society doesn't abide by those. Did y'all get that memo? Y'all got that memo pretty much, like things are not working out with the legal, right? So we don't need to go through that whole thing, but you know, I just want to say that, you know, and I'll discuss it in like some specifics later, but I'm not a lawyer by training, I'm an economist. I spent a lot of time studying economics and, you know, Harvard and went to MIT too, and you know, I went to school with them all. I got it. Took the notes, did pretty good in school, but you know, what I know is, so I look at things perhaps in a different framework, but you know, in our conference earlier today, we were talking about the need for a paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift is in legal institutions and it's in economic institutions. It's in how we relate to the world. It's in how we relate to the world. And we are the ones that are going to have to do that. You know, because this is a generation when, you know, in our prophecies, it is said that as Anishinaabe people, we have a choice between two paths. One path, they say, is well-worn, but it is scorched. The other path is not well-worn and it's green. And it'd be our choice upon which path to embark. And so, you know, I've spent much of my life fighting stupid projects. You know, I'm 57. You know, I really like to just kind of grow some cool corn, you know, you know, hang out. I got some new squash. I was just out at the Mandan, and I was in a regular territory, and they gave me some really cool squash. I was like, I'm ready, let's do that. You know, I like to do cool things, but I spend an inordinate amount of time battling really stupid projects, you know, because it is the same paradigm, you know, and so I've spent my life, you know, I started as a young woman in the 1980s fighting uranium mining, you know, and you know, and Algetics was a big influence on me as a young woman, but, you know, I mean, multinational corporations coming in with big uranium mines on the Navajo reservation, 44 uranium mines, 10 uranium mills, 5 coal-fired power plants, 4 coal strip mines. Wow, that sounds fabulous, huh? You know, meantime, 85% of those people's houses had no electricity. That's a snapshot of colonialism in America. You know, because this is all about that, too. This is all about that. And so we spent a lot of time trying to stop the uranium mines coming in, and we joined with movements across the country, some here in Wisconsin, elsewhere to battle nuclear power plants, to battle the Kool-Aid that was passed out by the electrical industry that, you know, so cheap you wouldn't have to meter it. You know, it's all good, it's all good. It's all good in the hood with nuclear energy. It was not, you know. And so I spent a lot of time going to hearings and working in the community, and we stopped uranium mining at Navajo at the time. You know, but that was a long battle. You know, and we closed it down because a lot of nuclear power plants in this country were closed down at the same time. A lot of them, I always like those pictures of those mothball plants, you know. And Zoltan Grossman, a friend of many of us, was just posted something on his Facebook. I was getting a kick out of it, but he has up there. But it was like a picture of a Satsop. I don't know if y'all remember this nuclear. There's this, it was called Washington Public Power and Supply, Washington State. It's a really bad acronym, really. Whoops. Whoops. It's an acronym for their you know, nuclear power program, you know, whoops. I was like, where are the guys? Like, bad choice on the naming there, you know? And so they had it out there, they had this new plan for 5 new power plants, and, you know, it never worked out for them. And so they have, like, mothball power plants sitting up there. They had, like, all that concrete, the big dome and everything like that. So I was driving by that one time with one of my friends, and I pick up the paper, and the paper says they're trying to figure out what to do with their nuclear power plant shell that they had never used, you know, like that repurposing of a nuclear power plant shell thing. You know? So they had 2 choices, and one was a jail, and the other one was a shopping mall. I said, that is so funny, that is so America. You know, let's just go shop at the old nuke, you know? You know, it's like crazy stuff, man, it's like crazy stuff we got. But anyway, so, you know, I don't know if they're still contemplating that up there, what they should do with that. You know, I thought they should do what Ralph Nader did, my running mate, which is, you know, Museum of Torts. You know, I thought you should have like a museum of bad ideas. You know, put it here in the nuclear power plant, right? You know, it's like right there with a Dalcon shield and an exploding gas tank, and you know, it's like a lot of bad ideas. We should just like have a museum of bad ideas, you know? It's a bad idea. So, you know, because I mean, that's the thing, is like people forget, you know, like how crazy it is. But, you know, what I learned from that is that you can fight a lot of things, and you can stop them. You can stop them, but you gotta keep fighting. And their projects are so expensive. You know, and Paul Domingue knows that as the longer you fight them, the less likely they are to hold on to their shareholders and their investors. You know, which is what we're learning in the pipeline fight. So, fought the mines, but one of the things is that we fought the mines and we didn't change the level of consumption. That's what my little argument is about. This is that you got to shift the paradigm, but you also got to shift the paradigm of how we live. You know, because if you live in a society which wastes 57% of the energy between point of origin and point of consumption, which is what our super first world system of inefficiency does, serves power companies really well. You know, they can just keep producing and we can keep paying for it. It's pretty much hemorrhaging out from, you know, really archaic coal generating facilities. Like, how old is that damn thing in Ashland, Wisconsin? Y'all let me know on that thing. That was like some dinosaur. Right? That's like a 50-year-old plant or 60-year-old. There's one plant in northern Minnesota that's older than my mother. You know, my mother is in robust shape, but she's not a coal generator. You know, you shouldn't have an 83-year-old coal generating station that you're trying to pretend is still working. So anyway, didn't change the level of consumption. And so it didn't change the level of consumption, so we stopped some uranium mines, and then they started trying to put up dam projects in northern Canada because no one wanted nukes. And so they shift from one bad idea to another bad idea to another bad idea. You know, all in violation of the laws of nature, for sure. but also is like entirely systemic in the problem, in the paradigm that we live in, which is, you know, how do you keep feeding a really inefficient system which is totally out of touch and out of reality and unsustainable. So, you know, that's how I've looked at things, you know, as I spend a lot of time finding this bad things and bad things and bad things, you know, high levels of consumption.